Billionaire in disguise. Shakes up a public school. What this custodian confesses will haunt him. Adrian Leclerc grew up surrounded by luxury, heir to an empire built on power and influence. But when he decides to infiltrate a public school in Baltimore disguised as a teacher, believing it would all be a game of appearances, he discovers a harsh reality: crumbling classrooms, forgotten children, and invisible workers who bear the weight of the system. It is in this environment that he meets Maya Freeman, the school custodian, and her daughter Zuri, a brilliant girl who carries dreams bigger than the walls that confine her. What begins as a controlled experiment turns into a journey full of confrontations, revelations, and unexpected emotions. Amid exposed lies, tested loyalties, and the courage to challenge injustice, Adrian finds himself facing the most difficult decision of his life. A path where power, love, and truth can never coexist without consequences. Welcome. Before we dive into this emotional story, I want to invite you to participate with me. Comment down below where you're watching from. I'm really curious to know how far these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy intense love stories, blending drama, resilience, and plot twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't just follow each new episode, but also help this space grow and keep bringing you narratives that touch deep in the heart. Shall we go together? The early morning in Baltimore began gray, swept by a cold wind that stirred damp leaves and the diesel smell of buses. Adrian Leclerc parked an old sedan, hastily rented, in front of a row of worn brick row houses. The car trembled as if it had asthma. He turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark brown hair slicked back, now deliberately tousled. Neatly trimmed beard made to look careless. Thick-rimmed glasses that concealed the calculated coldness of his gray-blue eyes. He had traded the tailored suit for a worn brown jacket, a cotton shirt that wrinkled easily, and pants unfamiliar with a tailor. On his wrist, a scratched watch. The opposite of the collection kept locked in a safe. His phone vibrated relentlessly. His father's name, Charles, pulsed on the screen like a warning. Adrian answered, still watching the silhouette of the school in the distance. A reddish brick building with tall windows and a few loose shingles. "I expect your report by the end of the day," Charles's voice said, firm and sharp. "Talk about the numbers, donation outreach, photos with smiling children. The rest is noise." "Understood," Adrian replied, keeping his voice neutral. "Don't get involved. This is a study, not a crusade." The call ended. The silence that followed felt even louder. Adrian shoved the phone into his pocket, grabbed the folder with the alias Mr. Adams, and crossed the street. The sky seemed to hesitate between raining and simply threatening to. The letters on the sign above the school's front door were incomplete. Two missing, hanging by a stubborn screw. In the courtyard, a mural with peeling paint read, "Presence Matters," next to a drawing of raised hands that looked more like they were begging for help than celebrating. At the entrance, the metal detector beeped at the slightest movement. The security guard, a tall man with broad shoulders and a tired gaze, raised his hand. "ID, please." "I'm a volunteer," Adrian said, handing over the freshly printed badge. "Math." "Mr. Adams." The guard examined it, ran a UV light over it, looked up again. "Welcome, Mr. Adams. The coffee down the hall's broken, but the water fountain still works. Sometimes. Thanks." Adrian tried to smile, but the joke tasted like rust. The main hallway was lit by fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. The linoleum floor reflected hurried footsteps, the sound of dragging backpacks, the symphony of kids arriving in groups, laughing loudly, arguing, negotiating space. A blue bucket caught drips from a pipe wrapped in silver tape on the ceiling. Anti-bullying posters shared space with warnings about teacher shortages. The air carried a mix of bleach, old paint, and warmed cafeteria bread. Vice Principal Ellison waited for him with a clipboard in hand. Her bun was perfectly tied at the top of her head, but the dark circles under her eyes revealed long nights. Her blazer was from another winter, and her pen was chewed. "Math volunteer," she said, checking her papers. "Room 208, 8th grade. The official teacher is, let's say, out for an indefinite time. Here's the day's plan." She handed him a binder with a cracked cover. "The kids are great," she added, with exhausted honesty. "It's just that the system keeps demanding from them what it doesn't give. If you need anything, shout, literally." "Thank you," Adrian said, adjusting the binder. "I'll do my best." "I hope so." She sized him up for a second. "And don't hand your spirit over to cynicism. It eats you up fast around here." Adrian climbed the stairs. Each step creaked a story. On the landing, the vending machine had a handwritten sign, "Out of order since last month." Beside it, a half-open door revealed a janitor's cart with rags folded with near-ceremonial care, bottles lined up, and a blue uniform hanging. He felt a chill he couldn't explain. He moved on. In room 208, the ceiling fan spun with a persistent squeak. The chalkboard, scratched, still bore the remains of interrupted equations. The desks had names carved with compass points. When the students entered, one by one, like an untamed current, the noise level rose immediately. "Who's the new guy?" asked a tall boy, cap turned backward, mischievous grin. "I'm Mr. Adams," said Adrian, writing the name on the board. His handwriting came out firmer than he expected. "Today we're going to talk with numbers." "Numbers talk?" asked a girl with tight braids, eyebrow raised. "When we listen closely, they scream," he replied. "And sometimes they tell secrets no one wants to hear." The room quieted for a moment. He walked among the rows, victims of mutual curiosity. He placed the binder on the desk, open to the fractions review page. He saw pages taped back together, others torn, calculations in pencil made by nervous hands. Before any exercise, he said, "I want to hear from you. What makes math hard?" "The noise," said the boy with the cap without hesitation. "And the mold. I keep sneezing." "Hunger," said the girl with braids, staring at him like she was throwing down a challenge. "All right." Adrian felt a knot in his stomach. "Then today, we'll start with something that doesn't need silence, clean air, or a full belly. A story." He pointed to the chalkboard. "Two brothers sell lemonade on the block. One has sugar, the other doesn't. Who sells more? And why?" "Duh, the one with sugar," someone blurted. "Duh." He tilted his head. What if the one with sugar is at the end of a flooded street where no one goes? The debate spread like fire on dry grass. Hands went up, laughter escaped, arguments emerged. Adrian led the discussion like a patient conductor, his voice without arrogance, his questions inviting, not cornering. Before he realized it, the whole class was leaning toward the board, calculating improvised ratios, discussing price, foot traffic, and conditions. Math applied to survival, the street as an equation. A drip in the corner of the room marked time in small bursts into the plastic bucket. The rhythmic sound was interrupted by a crack from the ceiling. Adrian looked up and saw a ceiling tile give way by a few inches. "Step away from the row by the window," he said calmly, but with unmistakable authority. The crack came again, louder. He crossed the room in 2 strides and, as the tile collapsed, managed to partially catch it, deflecting the impact from the empty desk. White dust covered his shoulders, and a thin cut opened in the palm of his hand. The class held its breath. "It's okay," he said, voice low but steady. "That's why we learn fast." "That was crazy," whispered the boy with the cap, eyes now wide. You didn't even scream." "Maybe I scream on the inside," Adrian replied, and only then realized he was telling the truth. The fire alarm, old and resentful, went off on a whim, a metallic howl that made the children cover their ears. Adrian organized the exit, one group at a time, hands on shoulders, quick lines. In the hallway, teachers repeated routines trained by necessity. Outside, the sky had finally decided to rain, fat drops hitting the asphalt, mixing with the distant smoke of a street grill someone insisted on lighting. Mr. Adams called Vice Principal Ellison, approaching with a first aid kit. "Your hand. It's superficial." He accepted the bandage, feeling the sting of the antiseptic. The tile gave out. "Everything almost gives out. Every day," she said. Not with irony, just fatigue. "But thank you for not letting it hurt more." Adrian looked around. He saw kids gathering wet notebooks, teachers handing out makeshift raincoats made of trash bags, a security guard directing traffic. No one asked for applause. Everyone just did what needed to be done. He felt the weight of his own breath. It wasn't performative compassion. It was guilt, a word that rarely visited him. The phone vibrated again. "Charles." He declined the call. Instead, he closed his hand over the bandage, feeling the throb. The cut was small, but it said something his mind hesitated to translate. "Mr. Adams!" A woman's voice shouted from afar, firm, deep, tinged with authority earned through effort. "If someone left this cleaning cart in the middle of the hallway, they're going to learn to put it back. The school is not a warehouse for our giving up." The tone cut through the rain and reached Adrian like a beam of light. He turned his head, searching for the voice's owner. He didn't see her yet, just the impeccable blue cart under the building's overhang, rags folded with dignity. The sentence lingered in the air, like an unresolved equation demanding a solution. He breathed in, feeling a subtle crack in his chest, inaudible to others but undeniable to himself. Something in him, trained to assess, to control, to measure, had just been measured in return. And for the first time, he might be at a disadvantage. The rain had softened into a drizzle when the voice returned, steady as a bell. "If someone left this cart here, they're going to learn to put it away. A clear hallway is respect." Adrian turned and saw her for the first time. Maya Freeman came toward him, pushing the cleaning cart like someone leading a ritual. Dark brown skin glistening with raindrops, coily hair in long braids, tied back with a faded elastic. Her amber brown eyes had a focus that didn't require niceties. The worn blue uniform fit her strong shoulders. On her feet, black sneakers stained with cleaning products. Her hands, fingers marked by tiny cracks, moved with an almost musical precision, hanging caution, wet floor signs and arranging cloths like instruments. "You're the new volunteer?" she asked, not slowing her pace. "Yes, Mr. Adams. Math." He noticed his own tone. Too neutral, too distant. "Great, Mr. Adams." "Then help me get this bucket out of here before someone slips." She pointed with her chin to the growing puddle near the door. "It's not hard, you just have to want to." He picked up the bucket. The cold water chilled his wrist. Maya parked the cart next to him and handed him a rag. "And why do you talk like you're in charge of me?" he muttered, low. It was the old armor asking for space. Because urgency is in charge of us, she said, looking at him calmly. And around here, urgency has a name. Children. A student with a torn backpack came running, skidded, and nearly fell. Maya caught him by the arm, gently but firmly. Slow down, champ. Watch the floor. Stick to the wall. The boy nodded and walked on. Adrian set the bucket down in the corner and looked over at Vice Principal Ellison in the distance, directing students, her hair already slipping from its bun. Maya noticed the bandage on his hand. You cut your hand? She came closer, opened the kit she carried on the cart, the clean smell of antiseptic filling the hallway. Let me see. No need, he said, stepping back half a step. Yes, there is. Around here we take care of the hands that work. She gently took his wrist. The touch was technical and still human. If it gets infected, who's going to guide the class? You? Me? He tried a half smile. Or at least I try. Then don't make it harder. Maya cleaned the cut with a tenderness that defied the urgency of the place. All done. A door swung open and the interim principal, a man in a suit who looked like he was shrinking under the rain, pointed at the leak. Freeman, this again? Can't we keep this hallway presentable? We can, when the roof stops raining from the inside, she replied, without raising her voice. I've already filed 3 reports, sir. I'll check with maintenance, he muttered, already turning away, fleeing the conversation. You'll check, sure? Maya echoed, turning to Adrian with a smile that came from far back, from someone who'd learned to survive broken promises. And we'll mop it up, like always. He watched her wring out the cloth and make broad movements that pushed the water toward the floor drain. It was an efficient dance. But Maya's eyes didn't dance. They assessed, demanded, decided. Adrian felt the old urge to reassert the hierarchy. I can call someone from administration to take care of this, he said, moving the cart to clear a path. Go ahead. She raised an eyebrow. But until someone shows up, the floor is still slippery, and falling hurts just the same. 2 students passed by, cracking jokes, laughing loudly. One of them shouted, "Thanks, Miss Maya." She replied without looking, "Go to class, Darnell. And give Kim her pencil back." The boy laughed, reached into his pocket, and dropped the yellow pencil on the nearest desk. Adrian noticed. She knew names, habits, small offenses, and small kindnesses. A map of war and of care. If you don't mind, I want to check the supply room, he said, wanting to occupy his body to silence his thoughts. Might need some books. You want the truth? Come with me. Maya pushed the cart down the hallway, weaving through backpacks and hurried footsteps. But don't be shocked by the dust of reality. They went down a narrow staircase that smelled of mold and stagnant water. The basement held the thick breath of machines. An old fan struggled to turn. Dark stains on the walls marked how high the water had risen in some past flood. Maya opened a metal door that creaked. This is where the school bleeds, she said. Missing rags upstairs? It starts down here. Inside were shelves lined with crumpled cardboard boxes, peeling labels, cleaning supplies counted like medicine. An entire corner was filled with notebooks wrapped in plastic, dust covering their surfaces, and in the center, an old heater and a drainage pump that looked like a tired animal, trying its best not to die. Adrian stopped when he saw the rusty little plaque bolted to the machine. Letters cut beneath the rust still read clearly, "Donated by the Leclerc Foundation. Commitment to education." His stomach clenched instantly. A silent crack shot through his spine. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, as if trying to hide a name no one had asked for. Maya noticed the microscopic shift in his face, that split second when the eyes lose focus and come back. "You know that name?" she asked, simply, without accusation, just sharp curiosity. "Because that donated pump fails every winter, and we haul water out with buckets while the kids sneeze in the classrooms." I've heard of it." He cleared his throat. "It's a big foundation, isn't it? Big on speeches." She touched the pump's casing with her fingertips, like waking something that prefers to stay asleep. "What's really big here is the leak." From above came the sound of the bell for the next class, a metallic ring that felt more like a warning. Maya turned her face to him, checking if he would head back up or stay. "Mr. Adams, there are two kinds of people here," she said, resting the rag on her shoulder. "The ones who step over the puddle and keep walking, and the ones who stop, dry it, then go complain about the roof. Which team are you on?" "Maybe I'm still choosing." He tried to hold his voice steady, but the weight of the plaque burned like an ember on his back. "But I don't run from hard problems." "Then go upstairs?" Maya pulled the door shut, clicked the padlock into place. "And don't call me the cleaning lady." "My name is Maya. That's the name I use to demand respect." They climbed the first flight in silence. On the landing, a narrow window let in a blade of light. Maya adjusted the wet floor sign with an automatic gesture. Adrian beside her noticed their breathing was in sync from the same effort, though for different reasons. When they reached the hallway, Vice Principal Ellison was waiting, holding a folder of damp papers. "Mr. Adams, your class is restless. They need you." She gave Maya a quick glance. "Thank you for keeping this passable." "I keep it." "Do you fix it?" Maya said, not with aggression, just truth. "We'll do our best," Ellison replied, walking away. Maya turned to Adrian, her gestures precise. "Go on, teacher. Teach what the numbers scream. I'll handle the floor." "Later, we'll talk about who cleans what shouldn't be dirty." He nodded, but his eyes betrayed his heart as they slipped for a moment back to the invisible basement and the plaque. It was as if the name Leclerc had leapt off the metal and etched a question into his skin. From afar, a creak in the ceiling reminded him of the building's daily fragility. And before walking off, Maya said without looking back, "If one day you want to go complain about that roof with me, I'll be here. But don't come with a speech. Come with your hands." Adrian walked toward the classroom, feeling the floor still damp under his soles. The children laughed in the background. He passed a bulletin board showing photos from old science fairs, cheap medals hanging from ribbons. In the corner of the board, another plaque, newer, partnership with the Leclerc Foundation, together for the future. His heart skipped a beat. It was as if the school was looking back at him, asking for an answer. At the classroom door, a student's voice called out, "Mr. Adams, you promised part 2 of the lemonade story." He smiled mechanically, and before stepping in, he turned around one last time. Maya was watching him from a distance, arms crossed, body slightly leaned, like someone gauging the distance for a jump. There was no irony there, only expectation, and a silent question he didn't know if he wanted or could answer. The afternoon settled heavily over the school corridors. The smell of reheated cafeteria food mixed with cheap disinfectant, creating a suffocating air. Adrian was leaving the classroom after finishing the activity, students dispersing in noisy groups. In a side hallway, just a few meters away, he spotted Maya carrying 2 heavy buckets. balancing them with effort while adjusting the wet floor signs with her foot. That's when the laughter of 3 boys echoed through the hall. Tall teens, backpacks slung over one shoulder, their gazes filled with challenge. One of them, in a mocking voice, mimicked the sound of a mop on the floor. Look at that. Queen of the bucket, saving the world with an old rag. The second added sarcastically, "Need help, lady? We'll clean it with the soles of our shoes." And the third laughed, repeating in a sing-song tone, "Queen of the bucket, queen of the bucket." Maya stopped, planted her feet firmly, but said nothing. She simply adjusted the weight of the buckets and kept going. The boys' grins widened at her silence. Adrian, leaning by the door, saw it all. His eyes met the scene, but his feet stayed rooted. Part of him knew one word could stop it, but another part, the harder part, kept him silent. Maya passed the boys, lifting her chin as if wearing her dignity like skin. As she met Adrian's eyes for a second, she knew. He saw it. But he didn't step in. The rest of the afternoon went on as if nothing had happened. Adrian gave another lesson, pretended everything was normal, but the weight of that moment clung to his shoulders like dust. At the end of the day, while organizing borrowed books in the teacher's lounge, he heard firm footsteps behind him. It was Maya. Her braids still damp with the sweat of the day's work, her posture upright, her gaze direct. There was no explosive anger, but a controlled coldness that cut deeper than shouting. "I saw you there," she said, voice low but deep. "You saw what they did. And you did nothing." Adrian tried to justify himself. "I thought it wasn't my place. Those boys are tough. And you seem to handle it well on your own." Maya narrowed her eyes, not blinking. Handling it doesn't mean accepting humiliation. The silence of someone who could have done something is just as cruel as the act of the one who oppresses. Her words echoed through the empty room, as if every chair and desk had heard. Adrian swallowed hard. He had never feared his father's lectures, nor threats from business partners, nor public speeches. But those sentences, spoken without raising her voice, entered him like blades. He tried to respond. "I didn't want to make it worse. I didn't want to expose you more." Maya took a step closer, so near that the scent of bleach from her clothes blended with the soft perfume she kept just for herself. Exposing and protecting aren't the same. When you stay silent, the ones who laugh think they've won. And I don't need an audience to watch my dignity being stripped away piece by piece. Adrian lowered his eyes, feeling the bandage on his hand throb. A reminder of the morning. The physical cut seemed small compared to the invisible wound her words were opening now. "You think you're here to teach numbers?" Maya continued, her voice unwavering. "Then start by understanding the simplest one. One silence is worth 1,000 aggressions." The hallway fell into a thick silence. Adrian wanted to reply, but nothing felt like enough. Maya walked away, pushing the cart, its wheels squeaking like an echo of judgment. He watched her until she disappeared around the corner. Alone, he leaned on the table, feeling his heart race more than it should. That woman, whom he had once thought of as just an invisible janitor, had become a mirror. And the reflection was nothing like the man he believed himself to be. At the far end of the hallway, he heard the boys laughing again. This time, though, the sound didn't bring indifference. It brought discomfort. It brought guilt. It brought an uncomfortable question. How long could he pretend that silence had no cost? The echo of the laughter still hammered Adrian's mind when the final bell rang. sending a current of voices and hurried footsteps through the courtyard. The sky was painted in orange and gray, hinting at another rainstorm. Adrian was putting away books and closing his binder when he noticed a small figure standing in the doorway, hugging a torn notebook covered in faded stickers. She was a girl of about 10 years old, light brown skin and voluminous curly hair escaping from a poorly done braid. Her golden brown eyes sparkled like restless beacons. She hesitated to enter, chewing on a worn pencil. "Can I help you with something?" Adrian asked, lifting his gaze. Math," she answered, almost in a whisper. "I tried, but the numbers won't sit still. They slip right out of my head." He made room and pointed to the front desk. "Have a seat. Let's try to hold those numbers down together." The girl placed her notebook on the desk. On the page were interrupted operations, nervous scribbles, and a problem with the answer circled 3 times. Wrong. Adrian pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "What's your name?" he asked. Zuri Freeman." She looked up at him with confidence, though her voice trembled. The revelation hit him like an unexpected wave. Zuri, Maya's daughter. His pulse seemed to quicken for no logical reason. He smiled, trying to mask the impact. "Nice to meet you, Zuri. I'm Mr. Adams." "I know." She smirked slightly. "Everyone says you write on the board like you're painting a picture. I just didn't get what lemons have to do with math." He found himself laughing too. Sometimes life is like a block full of lemonade stands. The trick isn't just knowing how to count, it's knowing where to sell. She rested her chin on her hand. "I don't want to sell anything. I want to build stuff. Bridges, buildings, machines that don't break from humidity. I want to be an engineer. But at school, everyone just says I should think about something more. Realistic." Adrian felt the weight of that word, realistic, like a chain. "And what do you say to that?" "I say realistic is letting the roof fall and mold grow. I want to fix it." Her conviction made something inside him waver. He took the pencil from her hand, pointed at the incorrect problem and said, "Then let's start building, right here, brick by brick, number by number." As he explained fractions, Zuri leaned in, following each line with focused eyes. When she finally got the answer right, she clapped softly and whispered, "I did it." "You did it because you didn't give up," Adrian said. "That's your first brick." Zuri smiled wide, and there was something disarming in that smile. It wasn't just the joy of learning. It was a purity that refused to be corrupted. Adrian felt the armor around him, built of control, calculation, and arrogance, begin to crack. Outside, 2 girls walked by and whispered loudly, "Look, the little poor girl needs tutoring. Even the janitor's daughter can't add." The laughter echoed, sharp. Zuri lowered her head but didn't cry. She just gripped the pencil tighter. Adrian felt his heart tighten. For a moment, he wanted to yell at the girl's but held back. Instead, he turned to Zuri. "Zuri, you know what's amazing about numbers?" he asked. "No," she said, still not looking up. "They don't care about your last name, or how much money you have. If you solve the equation, the answer is yours. No one can take it away." Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Her teary gaze now burned with determination. "Then I'll solve all of them. All of them." Adrian felt a lump in his throat, the kind that never showed up in board meetings or business speeches. He saw in the girl not just talent, but a flame that, if smothered, could die. And for the first time, he didn't know if he'd have the strength to stay silent about it. From the hallway, firm footsteps announced Maya's arrival. She appeared at the door, exhausted but alert. Seeing her daughter beside Adrian, she took a deep breath. Zuri ran to her, showing the notebook. "Mom, I did it! Mr. Adams helped me." Maya looked at the page with the correct answers, then at Adrian. Her eyes didn't show immediate gratitude, but a careful, almost wary assessment. Still, there was a restrained spark, like someone who expected nothing less from her daughter. "Good job, baby," Maya said, caressing the girl's cheek. "But remember, life doesn't always reward you when you get it right. You're going to have to fight twice as hard to prove you know what you know." Zuri hugged her mom, not letting go of the pencil. Adrian watched the scene, feeling like a witness to something sacred. He wanted to say something, but his voice failed. Maya lifted her eyes and locked onto his, steady. "Thanks for the help. But don't get any illusions. The math down here isn't solved with fractions alone." The silence that followed was heavier than any equation. Zuri looked from one to the other, unaware of the adult tension. And Adrian, still sitting, felt he had taken the first step into a story he wouldn't be able to control. The school auditorium smelled of dust mixed with weak coffee. The plastic chairs were filled with tired teachers, a few skeptical-looking parents, and curious students pretending not to listen. Adrian sat in the back rows, observing quietly. On the wall, a yellowing banner read, "Partnership with the Leclerc Foundation, investing in the future of education." The faded letters seemed to mock the reality around them. Up front, Vice Principal Ellison spoke with a tired voice. "Once again, we received less funding than promised. The report shows unexpected cuts, and maintenance is still delayed. The roof will have to wait another winter." Murmurs swept across the room. Maya sat among them, blue uniform still damp with sweat, sitting upright, her eyes alert. Zuri beside her, clutching her notebook to her chest like a shield. "They say there's no money," murmured a history teacher. Maya raised her hand but didn't wait for permission. Her voice echoed through the auditorium, firm, unshaken. "No money? Then explain why, on the public records, it says the Leclerc Foundation donated $150,000 to this school." "Where is that money?" "Because here, we have a roof that's falling, children getting sick from mold, and computers that have never worked." A heavy silence fell over the room. Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. The words Leclerc Foundation hit him like hammers. He fixed his eyes on the table in front, trying to mask the shock. Ellison cleared her throat, nervous. "Maya, we did receive part of the donation, yes. But there are administrative costs, transfer fees." "Costs?" Maya raised her tone, still dignified. "A cost is watching a student catch pneumonia because of a leak. A cost is a mother choosing whether to send her child to school or keep them home because there's no allergy medicine for mold. Meanwhile, a foundation stamped on our walls promotes itself like a savior." Some teachers nodded discreetly. Parents whispered. Zuri looked at her mother with admiration, eyes blazing with pride. Adrian, however, froze. His palms were sweaty, his heart racing. "You speak as if you're certain there's wrongdoing," said a school administrator, trying to diffuse the tension. "I'm not speaking as if I'm certain," Maya shot back, firm. "I'm speaking because I see. Anyone who lives here feels the gap between promises and reality, and that gap smells like a lie." Adrian clenched his fists. His father's name, Charles Leclerc, echoed in his mind like a sentence. He knew about the reports, the glass office meetings, the way administrative costs were often just a front for misappropriation. And now, in front of him, Maya, the woman who had already pierced through his arrogance with a single look, was laying out the truth, unaware of who he really was. If that money was really donated, she concluded, someone needs to explain why it never made it here. A tense silence fell over the auditorium. Even Zuri held her breath. Adrian felt the weight of a choice collapse onto him. His heart beat in two opposing directions. On one side, loyalty to his father, to the Leclerc empire, to the mask he wore. On the other, the courage of this woman, who had nothing but her voice and her dignity, yet dared to stand against a system that crushed so many. "Mr. Adams," Ellison's voice called him suddenly. "You're a volunteer here, as a mathematician. Maybe you can help us review these numbers." Everyone turned to him. The air thickened. Maya looked at him too, eyes piercing, waiting for something. He tried to speak, but his throat went dry. If he opened his mouth, he risked revealing too much. If he stayed silent, he'd be complicit once again. The wall clock ticked away the seconds with metallic clicks. The weight of the Leclerc legacy crushed his chest. And Maya's words, spoken days earlier, struck him again. The silence of those who can act is just as cruel as the act of those who oppress. He inhaled deeply, but before he could answer, the lights flickered twice, and the sound of heavy rain began drumming against the windows. Fate seemed to be demanding urgency. Adrian parted his lips, but the words hung in the air, as if the entire world were waiting to see which side he would choose. The meeting ended in tension and uncomfortable silence. Adrian left the auditorium with his mind tormented by Maya's words and the suffocating weight of the Leclerc name stamped on every wall. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried the dampness of broken promises. As he walked through the empty hallway, he heard nervous murmurs coming from the principal's office. Curious, he stopped at the half-open door. Inside, interim principal Mr. Watkins, a man with a puffy face and loose tie, spoke in a harsh tone. In front of him, Maya stood, her blue uniform stained with cleaning products, her posture firm despite the clear tension. "This is unacceptable," Watkins said, slapping a folder on the desk. "They found toxic chemicals improperly stored in the supply room." "That's a serious infraction, Maya, and I have no choice but to recommend your termination." Maya clenched her fists. "That's a lie." "I organized that room myself yesterday. Every bottle was labeled, every box in its place. If they found something wrong, it's because someone put it there after." "Are you accusing me of setting you up?" Watkins raised his eyebrows, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Careful with your words. You have no proof." Adrian felt his blood boil. This was obvious. Sabotage. He pushed the door open and walked in without asking permission. "I have proof." Maya's eyes widened when she saw him, surprised by the intrusion. Watkins clenched his jaw. "What are you doing here, Mr. Adams?" "This doesn't concern you." "It does," Adrian replied, stepping up to the desk. "Yesterday, when I accompanied some students to the basement, I saw Maya organizing every shelf. She was checking labels, tightening lids, and even explaining the risk of mixing certain products. If something's wrong today, it's because someone wanted it to be wrong." Watkins tried to compose himself. "You can't prove that. Words aren't enough." Adrian leaned over the desk, locking eyes with him. "But testimony is, and I witnessed it. If necessary, I'll report this publicly, including to the Department of Education." The silence turned heavy. Maya was breathing deeply, battling a storm of emotions. Watkins cleared his throat and looked away. Very well. I'll reconsider. But know this, Freeman. One more misstep, and you're out. He shut the folder and stormed out, footsteps heavy. The door slammed behind him. Maya stood still for several seconds before releasing a deep breath. She looked at Adrian, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and defiance. You didn't have to do that. Now people will say I only defended myself because I had help. I couldn't let them treat you like that, he said, his voice softer now, laced with sincerity. Not after everything you already deal with every day. She stepped closer, as if each move was a decision. Why do you care so much? You're just a volunteer. Tomorrow you could leave and never think about this school again. Adrian hesitated. The secret burning in his chest wasn't ready to come out. Maybe I'm not as indifferent as I seem. For a moment, they stood face to face, so close they could hear each other's breath. Zuri appeared at the door, calling softly, "Mom?" Maya stepped back, adjusting her uniform, trying to collect herself. "I'm coming, sweetheart." She turned to Adrian, eyes shining with a contained emotion. "Thank you. Really. But don't get used to being my hero. Around here, victories don't last long. Even so, they're worth fighting for," he said. She didn't reply. She just stared at him in silence. And in that silence, something new was born. Not hostility, not peace either. It was restrained desire, a hidden spark, ready to become fire. As Maya left with her daughter, Adrian remained in the room, his heart pounding. His hand still throbbed from the old cut, but now the pain came from somewhere else, from the realization that, without meaning to, he was already tied to her. Night had swallowed Baltimore with its soaked streets and distant sirens. Adrian drove steadily, his heart racing, while Zuri struggled to breathe in the back seat. Every wheeze from her chest felt like a blade in his gut. Maya held her daughter's hand, trying to stay calm, but the tears in her eyes betrayed the fear. She was fine this afternoon, Maya murmured, distraught. The mold in the classroom made it worse. "Hang on, Maya," Adrian replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "We're almost there." The community hospital appeared, lit up on the horizon, its flickering signs and line of ambulances. Adrian slammed on the brakes, jumped out, and rushed to open the back door. He carried Zuri in his arms, her body light and hot like a coal about to go out. Nurses ran toward them, placing an oxygen mask on the girl's face. "Is she going to be okay?" Maya begged, nearly voiceless. "We're stabilizing her," said a doctor, guiding the stretcher down the hall. Maya tried to follow, but a nurse stopped her. Adrian held her shoulders firmly, keeping her upright so she wouldn't collapse. She rested her forehead on his chest, and he felt the fragility she never showed. Minutes dragged on like hours until the doctor finally returned, announcing that Zuri was stable. It was a respiratory attack, but we managed to control it. She'll need some tests, but she's out of danger. The relief made Maya collapse into a chair. Adrian sat beside her, taking a deep breath like he'd run miles. The silence of the early morning filled the waiting room, interrupted only by the distant beeping of monitors. You saved my daughter," Maya said, her voice choked. "I just drove fast," he replied, trying to downplay it. "No." She lifted her face, her eyes burning with emotion. "You were there when no one else was. That's worth more than any empty promise." There was something in her gaze that disarmed every barrier he had ever built. a look of gratitude mixed with a dangerous spark. Adrian didn't look away. He leaned in slightly, feeling the warmth of her breath. "I can't explain why I care so much," he confessed in a low voice, "but it's real. I feel it." Maya hesitated, her hand trembling as it touched his face, almost unconsciously. "This can't happen. Not here. Not now." He leaned in, slowly, as if asking permission with his eyes. She didn't pull away. And in the charged silence of that early morning, between the scent of antiseptic and the distant sound of hospital machines, their lips met. It was a restrained but intense kiss. Gratitude, passion, and fear wrapped into a single gesture. Maya closed her eyes, allowing herself for a moment to believe in something she knew was far too risky. Adrian gently pulled her closer, feeling both the weight of vulnerability and the force of a desire too strong to deny. When they pulled away, the air felt heavier. Maya rested her forehead against his, her eyes moist. This shouldn't have happened. "But it did," he replied, his voice still shaking. She stood up slowly, trying to regain control. "I have a daughter to protect. I can't lose myself in something that might just be an illusion." Before Adrian could respond, a nurse entered to say that Zuri was calling for her mom. Maya rushed out, leaving him alone in the waiting room, the taste of the kiss still on his lips, and the weight of having crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The morning sun streamed through the school's high windows, revealing suspended dust particles like silent witnesses. Vice Principal Ellison had called teachers, students, and staff to an emergency assembly in the auditorium. The atmosphere buzzed with murmurs and anxious glances. Adrian sat among the teachers, heart pounding, though he didn't yet know why. The back doors opened, and Charles Leclerc walked in with firm steps. His dark gray suit fell perfectly over his broad shoulders, his tie aligned without a single crease. His cold eyes scanned the crowd with calculated disdain. At his side, 2 aides carried thick folders as if ready to present evidence in a courtroom. Maya, who was organizing the students in the corner, froze suddenly. Her silence revealed her understanding. This man wasn't just any visitor. Zuri clutched her mother's hand, confused. "Good morning," Charles began, his voice firm and theatrical. "I'm Charles Leclerc. Some of you may know me as the president of the foundation that has generously supported this school with funding for its operations." A murmur rippled through the auditorium. Adrian shrank in his seat, stomach twisting. He hadn't expected his father to show up, certainly not like this. "I've come today to clarify some misunderstandings circulating through the hallways and meetings," Charles continued. "Hints of misappropriation, baseless accusations. It's important that everyone here knows the truth." Maya raised her voice, unafraid. "The truth is, the promised money never arrived in full. The truth is, this school is still falling apart while your foundation's name decorates the walls." Charles looked at her like someone observing a bold insect. "And who might you be?" "Maya Freeman. I work here. I see the reality every day." He smirked, a sharp smile. "Interesting, very interesting. You, of all people." Adrian stood up instinctively. "Father, that's enough." Silence dropped like a stone. Everyone turned to him. Maya frowned, surprised. "Father?" she whispered. Charles stepped forward, his voice now dripping with disdain. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce not the humble volunteer teacher he pretended to be, but my son, Adrian Leclerc, heir to the empire that funds this school. He came here in disguise, hiding his name." The shock rippled through the auditorium like lightning. Students whispered, Teachers exchanged glances. Maya looked like she'd been struck in the chest. "You're a Leclerc?" she murmured, her eyes welling. Adrian tried to approach. "Maya, I can explain." But Charles raised his voice, crushing any attempt. "And that's not all. I see my son didn't just infiltrate the school. He also got involved, emotionally, with a school employee." He cast a cold stare at Maya. What a convenient coincidence, right? Who would refuse the attention of a Leclerc? Or was that exactly what drew her in? A cruel murmur spread through the audience. Maya's face burned, not with shame, but with humiliation. Zuri tugged at her arm, not understanding but sensing her mother's pain. "It's not true," Adrian cried out, voice cracking. "She never knew who I was. Never." Charles ignored him. "All I see is opportunism dressed up as dignity. And my son, blind, believing it." Maya took a deep breath, struggling to stay upright. Despite her strength, tears slipped down her cheeks. She looked at Adrian and didn't see the patient teacher who had taught her daughter numbers, but the heir to an empire that hurt her every day. "You lied to me," she said, voice low but sharp. "You looked me in the eye, listened as I spoke about the pain your family caused. And still, you said nothing." "Maya, please." Adrian reached out, desperate. "I wanted to tell you, I just didn't know how. Enough." She pulled Zuri away from the chaos and turned toward the exit. "I trusted you, and trust doesn't survive a lie." The auditorium's noise merged with whispers and heavy breathing. Adrian felt his world crumble. Charles, meanwhile, lifted his chin in silent victory, as if he had just ended a game. Maya disappeared through the door, Zuri's hand in hers, and Adrian stood in the center, before everyone, feeling smaller than ever before. The truth had exploded, but it hadn't just hit him. It had wounded the woman he had begun to love. 2 days after the public humiliation, newspapers splashed headlines about Charles Leclerc's visit to the Baltimore school. The photos showed the tycoon standing tall in the auditorium, and in contrast, Maya with tearful eyes. The headline was cruel: "Humble worker involved with billionaire heir." For Adrian, every word read like a sentence. But that morning, all the spotlight was on him. Adrian called a press conference. Wearing a simple suit, standing firm at the podium, he declared, "My name is Adrian Leclerc, and it's exactly that name I'm choosing to renounce today." He revealed that he had lived undercover at the school, seen crumbling classrooms and misappropriated funds. He accused his own father, renounced his inheritance, and promised to invest his personal fortune into public schools. Charles stormed out, enraged, while journalists swarmed Adrian. That evening, Adrian went to Maya's apartment. She opened the door still wounded. "More apologies?" "I've heard enough," he replied. "I didn't come to apologize. I came to show you that I've chosen a side, and it's not my father's." He handed her documents for a new foundation, with funds already allocated to the school. "Money's not enough," Maya said, still guarded. "But it's a start," he answered. At that moment, Zuri appeared holding a math book. "Is he really going to help, Mommy?" Adrian knelt in front of her. "I am. I'm going to fix everything no one else wanted to fix." Maya watched, torn between fear and the hope that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to change for real. The following months brought visible transformation. The old roof was replaced. The walls got a fresh coat of paint, and the smell of mold gave way to the scent of paint. Forgotten computers now filled a bright classroom where children learned with enthusiasm. Adrian wasn't just investing money. He was present, painting, carrying boxes, and listening to stories. The initial awkwardness turned into respect. One afternoon, Maya walked into the renovated library and found Adrian helping Zuri build a model bridge. When the structure passed the test, Zuri celebrated by running into her mother's arms. Maya, emotional, locked eyes with Adrian. "She believes in you," she said. He replied, "Do you?" After a moment of hesitation, Maya admitted she saw a changed man in him. Zuri joined their hands, sealing a new beginning. Over time, the neighborhood blossomed too. Murals, gardens, hope. At a press conference, Adrian summed it up. "Love isn't charity, it's commitment. Dignity isn't a favor, it's a right." Maya smiled from a distance, Zuri proudly by her side. And so, they became a family built on choices, courage, and faith. True love only flourishes when it's born from respect, dignity, and the courage to confront injustice. Money can't buy hearts, but truth and integrity can transform them forever. And that brings us to the end of this powerful story of pain, resilience, and a love that was born out of respect and bravery. And now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments to show how much you liked it. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who will feel it too, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. And before you go, I've already picked out another moving story for you. One even deeper, that will surely touch your soul and grip you from beginning to end.